Thanks, brothers and sisters. Thanks on behalf to Frank Dobson, the MP, who's come down here today, to Megan Dobney, the South East Region of TUC, and to Matt Wrack from the Fire Brigade Union. Some people accused us this morning of politicising what took place 25 years ago. Well, let me tell you something. I worked for London Underground 25 years ago. I was at home that night. There wasn't no emails then or no mobile phones, but I remember vividly getting a breaking news on the TV or news flash to say there'd been a serious incident took place. I used King's Cross 3 times a week, so did my family, and could have easily been me at that particular time when that incident took place. The fact is, we're here today, first of all, to show our condolences to the travelling public. And the fact is, if we'd had this demonstration 26 years ago, then perhaps 25 years ago the incident would never have taken place in the first place. By the way, when people talk about reef laying, I don't see the same people criticising us last week when we was laying reefs down at Tower Hill for the 4,000 seafarers of my union that perished in World War I. So people better recognise the fact it's only demonstrations and marching feet that change history. The reality is, brothers and sisters, what took place 25 years ago was that London Underground told us that the system was safe. They were saying there's no need to worry about safety, that staffing levels were okay. It was them that was making stations unsafe, doing away with people on platforms, and as a result of that incident, what happened was that a number of safety issues were put in place. How to store fuel, minimum staffing, better for communications. The fact is that London Underground's passenger numbers are going up and going up and going up. And when an incident takes place, it's only those professional, high visible staff downstairs that helps the travelling public link in with the emergency services. And can I say, we're not just shouting on behalf of my union, we're shouting on behalf of the other workers that work downstairs, but more importantly, the emergency services. It's an absolute scandal when people talk about they're not diluting safety and they want to do away with 17 fire stations purely in London itself. And that's why we say that we don't accept any cutbacks, whether it be to the emergency services or downstairs. Also, the fantastic job that the paramedics done that particular evening, the fantastic job that the hospital services done, and the fantastic job that the police done as well of helping. All of those people are now under attack, purely on the basis of the account books. And those accountants in Transport for London are more interested about how much money they can put on a balance sheet than it is to saving someone's heart or someone's brain. Therefore, brothers and sisters, what come out of that incident 25 years ago is now under attack. And we've now got people in place now that want to reduce the safety and put us back to where we was 25 years ago. Well, we're not accepting any dilution of the travelling public safety, and we're not accepting any dilution of our members' safety. And I'm telling you here today, on this anniversary, that we must remember those families that died, but we're never going to accept again the dilution of safety to have another King's Cross happen in years to come. And we're going to make it absolutely clear on behalf of RMT that if you don't listen to the professionals downstairs, our members who work on London Underground, then we're taking industrial action to defend ourselves and defend the safety of the travelling public on London Underground. Never again are we going to allow for that safety to be diluted down there. We commend all the people that turned up here today and the support we received from the wider trade union movement, and make sure today that we lay our wreath on behalf of the TUC, the Frank FBU and RMT. And when we lay that wreath, we say sorry to what happened to those people who perished that particular night, and never ever again will it happen on London Underground. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. A few words about the wider context. Let me take you back to January 2012, earlier on this year. David Cameron, his New Year message. One of the coalition's New Year resolutions is this: kill off the health and safety culture for good. I want 2012 to go down in history not just as Olympics year or Diamond Jubilee year, but the year we banished a lot of this pointless time wasting from the economy and British life once and for all. And he goes on to talk about the health and safety monster. Well, let me tell you something about the health and safety monster. This year, 173 people have been killed at work. And particularly for me, in the southern and eastern region, in 1 week, Construction News tells us 3 building workers were killed at work. I will keep my remarks very brief and conclude by saying that statement of David Cameron's may be the only successful piece of work that he is going to do, but we are going to stop it. Our frontline troops, union health and safety reps, will be united in saying, never again, every worker's life is precious and we will protect them. Thank you.
Mark that terrible incident that occurred 25 years ago, but one of the things that happened then was there was a big official inquiry, and that inquiry resulted in the boss of London Underground and the chief executive of London Underground losing their jobs. But much more importantly, it proposed all sorts of safety improvements to apply right across London Underground, and that when this place was redeveloped, there should be a big improvement in safety. Lessons were actually learned. The problem is there are some people now who want to unlearn those lessons and go back to the dangerous situation that occurred before. And it seems to me pretty simple. You can reduce the number of staff. You could even have trains without drivers. It's okay when everything's going well, but the minute anything goes wrong, no automatic machine is going to help anybody. The only people who can help are human beings. When, after the bomb at Russell Square tube station, the station staff helped, the firefighters helped, the ambulance service helped, the police helped. There wasn't a single management consultant went down there to help. I doubt whether there was a hedge fund manager went there to help. It was the people we always rely on and the people we pay for and the people who do the good job. But the other thing that's worth remembering is this. Boris Johnson is now wanting to reduce the fire cover. He wants to get rid of the fire station at Clerkenwell and the one in Islington. Both of them played a big part in trying to rescue people after the bomb outrages. And we're always going to be dependent in central London on people coming from different places to help us out. The courageous firefighter who lost his life trying to save lives here at King's Cross. He wasn't from Euston Fire Station because they were already out on another job. He came from the one in Shaftesbury Avenue. We're all interdependent and we've got to try to make sure that those emergency services remain. But I come back to the point, if you get rid of people, if things go wrong, there's nobody there to help. And that's why I strongly support the RMT and all the other unions in arguing for keeping up the staff levels and keeping this system of ours safe. And the other thing I'd say is this, not all the stations are safe, and I will continue to campaign for the rebuilding of Camden Town Tube Station, which I believe is very dangerous at weekends with all the people going to Camden Lock. Thank you very much.
Thanks, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm very pleased to be here, but obviously we're remembering a very serious event. I remember in the fire service, those of us who are around will remember 25 years ago very, very well, seared into our memory. I didn't attend the incident, but it was actually the first funeral of a firefighter killed on duty that I attended in my career in the fire and rescue service. And I have to say that sadly I have attended many, many more since then. And Colin Townsley was the station officer who was killed. And I suppose one of the things about Colin's death was that while the vast majority of people were trying to get out of King's Cross, Colin Townsley was going the opposite way. He was going into King's Cross as that fire took hold, and he's lost his life trying to save the lives of other people. And we keep being told every time one of our members is killed that the employers and the government will learn the lessons. And tragically, we spend a lot of time researching those deaths, those fatalities, those terrible incidents which destroy the lives of the families of those involved and devastate the lives of the working colleagues of those involved as well. And unfortunately, every time we do that, we find there are common themes. involved in those fatalities, and it strikes us that actually the lessons are not being learned. King's Cross stands out because of the number of the members of the public who were killed. But every day people are under threat from fire and other incidents. In London we saw the very serious fire at Lakanal House 2009 where 6 people were killed. And yet just a few months later we saw a fire in a similar tower block down in Southampton where 2 firefighters were killed. And again, it seems to us that people are not necessarily learning the lessons. Frank has already mentioned the scene in the London Fire Brigade, and it's 17 fire stations according to leaked documents, and as Frank said, that would include 2 fire stations very close to King's Cross, at Islington and at Clerkenwell. But the point about an incident on the scale of King's Cross, actually it doesn't matter about where those stations are, because on an incident on the scale of King's Cross, fire engines come from all over London to help out. And if you reduce the resources as they are planning, then the fire service will be increasingly stretched when an incident happens on this scale. So it's absolutely essential that we do make that link between the safety of our members, and we have the right, whether we work on the underground or we work in the fire and rescue service or we work in other public services, to say we're happy to do those jobs, but we have the right to demand safety for our people. But we're also the trade unions who are at the forefront of fighting for safety, and we work closely with the RMT on underground safety and on rail safety generally, because both of us are on the front line of dealing with those incidents when they happen. And the night before the election, you know, David Cameron went to a fire station in Carlisle. It's a good photo opportunity. And he made a pledge there. He said, we're going to protect frontline services. Well, in the first year of their cuts alone, we've seen 1,500 fire service jobs go. All over the country, fire authorities are planning to close fire stations, get rid of fire engines and get rid of firefighters' jobs. So it's a complete and utter lie. It's a disgraceful lie when they say that frontline services are being protected, because they're not. So we have to work together with our colleagues in other unions, with the RMT and the unions representing other public sector workers, emergency service workers, to say this, that actually we want government, employers, public authorities to start seriously putting public safety first. Putting it before cost cutting, put public safety first. And I'll just close with this message from the trade union movement that's well known. We remember the dead, but we fight for the living. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm now a member of the London Assembly. 25 years ago, I was a trade union lawyer. And it was my job to coordinate the response on behalf of the trade unions to the public inquiry and the compensation claims. And 2 days after the fire, I came here and went down into the tunnels and into the public areas, and what I saw then and what I smelt then will live with me forever. And I was convinced then, if I needed any more convincing, that this sort of thing must never ever happen again. And I started campaigning then, 25 years ago, for a law of corporate manslaughter. Eventually I got into Parliament and we were able to get half a corporate manslaughter law in place then, because I felt it was absolutely outrageous that the senior managers responsible for what happened downstairs here escaped effectively scot-free. They should have gone to jail, and they didn't. That was an outrage. And since then we saw more and more similar accidents, rail accidents and other public sector accidents, where similarly people did not go to jail. And what I think is absolutely outrageous now is that this government is starting to make inroads into our safety laws and regulations, as we heard earlier on. They're about to put a law through Parliament now to take away the right to bring a claim if the law is broken and a worker is injured. They're taking away your right to claim for a breach of statutory duty. That is an outrage. It will mean many workers who are injured will go uncompensated. But what I also think is important here is that we actually look at what is going on in the cuts, as Matt has said. I recall when we investigated that fire, the fire engines coming from all over London. I recall the response from all the trade unions across London. And what I recall in particular was if it was not for that trade union coordinated response, we would not have been able to put the case on behalf of workers and passengers at that public inquiry. The unions paid for that representation. They got very little back from the government towards that. 93 days of listening to arguments about what went wrong and what needed to be done to put things right. As Frank said, some of the things were put right. We don't have wooden escalators anymore. People aren't allowed to smoke on the tube anymore, as they could then. But what remains to be done is the fact that if we get unmanned trains, if we get cuts in the fire service, the risk of this happening again remains. That's why I'm standing with my colleagues on the London Fire Authority to do what we can to make sure those cuts don't happen to the fire brigade, and we stand with RMT to make sure that we don't have those unmanned trains on the tube, because those are recipes for disaster. We must stop them happening. Thank you.